The opinions, views, and conclusions expressed in this show are those of the show host and co-host and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of KPFV FM or its affiliates.
KPFV LP 98.1 FM presents Changing the Planet One Mind at a Time every Thursday, 1 p.m. with your host, Gail Gaia. Good afternoon. This is Gail of Gaia, and we are here guest calling in today, Mr. Ken Doss, and I think you'll find his talk very interesting as he has been researching for well over 10 years on subjects that include the theft of our identity, copyright law, patent law, and the things that have been done to basically hypothecate our name and use it against us and turn the debt over to us, and we don't get any of the profit that's involved. So Ken is calling in at the moment, and he will soon be on the line. We will be... Is that you, Ken? Are you on the line now?
That's me.
All righty then. That's good, because I'm sitting here, well, what am I going to say next? Okay.
I be here.
Okay, that's great. Ken, we were on the show a few weeks ago, and you informed us about a number of things, and it is my understanding that you have even more. But before we go any further, just in case people don't remember or miss that show, let's talk a little bit about your background. I know it's in architecture, but it's also you're an avid researcher in the area of patents, copyrights, and the loss of our identity. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Ken?
Well, my background is in architecture. I was 25 years in the field of architecture and had my own little business as a design consultant, and that all came to a screeching halt 1 year before the economic collapse. And the reason why it came 1 year before the economic collapse, because the powers that be were trying to prevent a economic collapse, and more specifically to commercial paper. So in their infinite wisdom, they basically froze, and anybody who's in the construction industry or design industry or developing industry knows full well what I'm talking about, because they all experienced it, the sudden freeze of credits in that industry, and shifting it all over to support commercial paper from collapsing. So my career in architecture ended in 2007, a year before the economic collapse, the general economic collapse. So that kind of froze me out of architecture and ended my career. As a result of that, and due to personal experiences with banking that goes back to 2001, and being forced into, basically having our credit destroyed, being forced into a refinancing in 2005 with Own It mortgage, and with the collapse that followed, I knew something was wrong. I was angry.
And I was small wonder.
And I was unemployed.
Yeah, sometimes when we're put through this kind of pain, it kind of forces us in a different direction, or in a direction of seeking the truth. And how did this ever happen? It's not supposed to happen in this country, but it does.
Right. And that's kind of what happened to me. I was, after the collapse, being unemployed and having nothing in by way of any kind of employment, and I think we all kind of reminisce back to that time. And
yes, and it's like, I just don't want to work for McDonald's. I just can't do it.
Well, exactly. Well, I don't think even McDonald's was even higher back then. But
I'm sorry, McDonald's, but I do have my issues with that company. But anyway, that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole other, well, going for 25 years of architecture to may I help you at the McDonald's counter is yes, it doesn't quite compute.
Just like going from nutritionist and trying to do that behind McDonald's counter just doesn't compute either.
That's an oxymoron there.
Exactly. So anyway.
So I just started looking into things, and I had done a provisional patent back a few years prior to that, and when I had kind of just come up with a design for doghouses, architectural style doghouses that were cute, easy to put together, so on and so forth. So anyhow, I did a provisional patent on that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It was a good idea, and actually it was going to go somewhere before the collapse came. But so not only did I lose my 25 years in architecture, I lost the potential of a good business venture as well. So I kind of lost two things. But I one day come across the words to inure to the benefit. And those words, they stuck with me. It's like, okay, where did I see these words before? I've seen them somewhere before. And I thought, oh, it's my patent. So I went to the patents. I started looking at patents, and lo and behold, I came across hundreds of patents from Bank of America and origination and credit, and quickly learned that, oh my God, they patented everything. This has nothing to do with a mortgage loan. This has to do with patents. So that's what got me on that's what kind of got me on this path.
Well, for those of us in the audience that might be a little unclear on things, I looked up the definition of patent specifically for this. I mean, I know you know, but some people are out there, if they're a little unclear, just to clarify it, a patent is basically a government authority or license conferring the right or title for a set period of time. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I think most people associate a patent with like Alexander Graham Bell's telephone or with Thomas Edison's light bulb.
Exactly.
Something that's a tangible invention. And not a business process.
Exactly. That's why I wanted to try to clarify this somehow for people.
But, and to clarify further, the court in its infinite wisdom, or as I would like to think, in its infinite payoffs, ruled in a case in 1998 entitled State Street versus Signature Financial Group, and they ruled that business processes are patentable. And the reasoning behind it, now in order for something to be patentable, it has to produce a concrete and tangible result. Well, what does tangible mean? Tangible means something you can touch and feel, right?
Yes.
Something that's real, something that's real and in existence, in physical existence. Well, the court deemed that, the results that this algorithmic program, this business process, comes up with, and the results that are put into a broker's hands, by which that broker can go ahead and give advice to his investors, is a concrete and tangible result, which I think is a total bunch of malarkey. But nonetheless, that's kind of what set this thing off. Now, that allowed business processes to be patented. Now, what do I mean by business process? I mean by business process by a loan origination process, a credit analysis process, a bond enriching process, or any kind of financial instrument that that can be gained through a patented process.
Wow.
So they had that in hand. So what they needed was a couple more things, and they got it. And this is just pure payoffs down the line. And this is just our government officials and politicians just caving into payoffs and
bribes,
under-the-counter services, so to speak, of the bank lobbyists. And in 2001, the revisions to UCC Article 9 kicked in, which has to do with secure transactions, meaning that transactions can be collateralized, meaning they could be rehypothecated and sold, and resold. Well, underneath that UCC 9 falls patents, copyrights, and trademarks. So what they were able to do now is they were able to take our identity, our name, our trade name.
So that's how they hypothecate our name, correct?
That's how they hypothecate our name. Yes. And so what happens, and what they were able to do now was they were able to take our identity and they were able to rehypothecate it and sell it several times over. So, and not only that, anything that we put our name on, they're able to put into the marketplace and make a profit on and get a return on.
And now, I also looked up the definition of hypothecate for the sake of the audience, and basically the definition I found was to pledge property as a security for a debt.
Yes. Now here's where the twist comes in.
That makes me mad when I think. Okay, go ahead.
It's going to make you more mad as we discuss as we go on here today. But the solutions, though, I believe the solutions are in hand, which we'll get to later. But what you've got here is you've got a total set. Now, all these processes, understand, there's something that's called not in the ordinary course of business. Mm-hmm. And it's not in the ordinary course of business. Why? It's because it's unfamiliar to the consuming public and paradigm. essentially. And the paradigm and the what I call the ordinary course deception is of representations to a mortgage loan to real property. So when people sat down and signed these documents purported as being a mortgage loan, what they were really executing was they were executing a lease agreement where there was no mortgage loan whatsoever at all. It's a lease agreement, and it's a lease transaction, which means it can be canceled at any point in time. And as such, when a lease transaction is canceled, the books have to balance and the differences pay out. Well, that's what's actually going on here. But we have a system that's operating in complete lawlessness, where we have bar attorneys coming into court, representing and standing up in court. And I still remember the day it happened in my case, and just my mouth is hitting the floor, and I just looking at him and say, "How can you sit there and lie? How can you sit there and actually lie and say that there's a negotiable
they're
instrument
paid liars,
that never,
Ken.
ever existed?"
They're paid liars, Ken.
Well, no, it's not the good lie. You don't have to be a good liar or a bad liar. If you're an attorney and you're in the system, then you're guaranteed to win because the system is fixed.
Yeah.
And these judges are not real judges. They're administrators of royalties. What kind of royalties? Copyright royalties, which is all of these investments and all these trusts, these hidden trusts that are out there that pay off. Now, where's the proof of this? Okay, the proof of this is in an agreement entitled Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems Inc. / Nations Bank Credit Security Agreement, which is an agreement that nobody knows of, that was not represented to one single consumer at closing or any point thereof or any time at all, that resides underneath the MERS United States registered trademark, which could have been very easily represented, but it wasn't. It was completely misrepresented within the Fannie and Freddie documents that people signed purporting to be a mortgage loan to real property. And because of this...
Okay, keep going.
Go ahead.
I got a
question.
question.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, well, my question was that, does this apply to student loans as well?
Yeah, yes, it does. In a bigger picture, it applies to everything.
Oh,
it applies to everything.
Okay.
The easiest illustration of it is through this MERS Nations Bank agreement, because that just collapses everything around what's going on here. So the MERS Nations Bank agreement really is prima facie evidence that not a single mortgage loan holder or signer was ever a debtor. And the reason for this comes back to UCC 9 and the collateralization of intellectual properties. So what they did was they trapped people, lured people into signing a mortgage loan that was on documents, Fannie and Freddie documents, that was created expressly by presidential mandate to create a document where all terms and conditions are spelled out within the four corners of the agreement, meaning that there's no hidden terms or any kind of extraneous terms outside those four corners. And that would be understood by everybody. That would be integrated into state laws by uniform codes and would be understandable by consumers and everybody. So what they did was they broke their mandate. They completely shattered the four-corner rule of these Fannie and Freddie documents by the inclusion of MERS and the misrepresentation of MERS by the omission of that MERS was a trademark. And see, now if that would have been revealed, then some people, me and my infinite wisdom at that point in time would never have caught it, but somebody in their infinite wisdom, some kind of group or somebody out there would have said, "Hey, I see a circle R here on the Fannie and Freddie document," and they would have looked it up and they would have found and discovered this MERS Nations Bank agreement. This agreement is crucial because it's prima facie evidence that you never signed a mortgage loan to real property agreement. What you signed and executed was a mortgage in copyright. And when you put your name on that MERS Nations or that Fannie and Freddie document with MERS attached to it, what you were actually doing was you were agreeing to terms and conditions of this MERS Nations Bank agreement that you were giving them exclusive licensing rights to your name and identity. Let that sink in for a minute.
That's
So
pretty upsetting. Talk about identity theft. This is a
It's
whole
hugely-
different
it's-
ball game of identity theft.
It's hugely upsetting because here's the premise now. Now, here's the premise, and it's very simple. It's, well, wait a second here. If for all those times that you sold, meaning the banks, every time you resold a pool of loans that I'm supposedly included in, you took those profits and you put them in your pocket, and I never got a nickel return. Well, wait a second here. This is not a mortgage loan to real property. This is a balancing of the books that balances out an alleged mortgage loan, but is based against my signature that is of a substantial and considerable value, to which I never got a nickel for.
That's very disturbing.
That makes sense? I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does to me. I'm hoping that it does to the audience as well. Maybe we need to explain a little bit about the legal name, or how is it that they, do we actually own our legal name?
Well, that's the whole point about this. What they did was they took all rights to our name, and actually no, they didn't really take all rights to it. We gave them all rights to our name through this MERS Nations Bank Agreement.
But we didn't know it.
Then you never even knew it. Exactly. It's the most evil deception in history, because what it has done is it has forced at least over 100 million signers of those kind of documents into a life of involuntary servitude, meaning that they're compliant to and unknowingly compliant to somebody else who they've given authority to use their signature and put their signature upon documents upon which we become the collateral guarantor or the surety for all the transactions that are being signed in our name, and that they're pocketing all the profits for, and we're not getting a nickel in return.
And that's horrible. I mean, it's
as fraudulent. It's as fraudulent and lawless as can be. It's terrible. It's horrible what's going on here, and it's got to come to an end. So, what you have here is, a lot of people are going down a lot of different paths here,
mm-hmm.
I've done the same thing. I've gone down the birth certificate route. I've gone down all these other routes with affidavits and claiming sovereign and all these things. And at the end of the day, where I'm at with this right now is I'm like, you know what? Screw it. What this comes down to. This comes down to a business transaction to which my all caps name was incorporated into a corporation to which I never got a nickel of. And yet at the same time, though, it's my signature that is providing the profits for these rehypothecations time and time again, and the insurances and everything. So what's happened here is, and this is why they keep coming after people. This is why courts don't listen, because first of all, it's all business processes. Second of all, everybody's in cahoots and in bed with everybody. Third of all, the court system is a kangaroo court. These judges should be thrown in jail. They should be brought up on charges, as with all these foreclosure mill attorneys that are actually lying by committing fraud in the court by saying that there's a negotiable instrument or a mortgage loan of any sort or kind when there never was.
That's not only the mortgage situation, but people don't seem to have a prayer when they go into court for anything else either.
No, they don't. And it all has to do with giving rights away to your signature. It all has to do with that. So what we need to do is first thing we need to do is we need to remove, between our all caps name, let's talk about our all caps name for a minute.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
There are still people that don't know about that, Ken, so that's good. Let's talk about it.
That's good. We're going to expand that definition, because a lot of people think of the all caps name as a fiction, and they're right, it is a fiction. But there's more than that.
There's more to it than that, yes.
There's more to it than that. It's not just a... So when we sit there and we say, okay, we're claiming all rights to our all caps name and all derivative spellings thereof, what we're saying is, so Kenneth William Doss all caps, we're saying that includes Kenneth W. Doss all caps and KW all caps and all different spelling variations thereof. But really what it captivates and encapsulates is all conversions as well. And because what we're doing, and this is what people really got to understand, and if you can grasp this concept, then you'll understand exactly why you were never, ever a debtor. You've been converted into a system of trade and commerce that is functioning in the virtual world, meaning that we are, all these patents, there's over 30 Goldman Sachs patents, there's hundreds of Bank of America patents, there's dozens of Morgan Stanley patents. All these frickin' banks have made these, have gotten these patented processes that are future forecasts for financial gain. Meaning, for instance, Goldman Sachs will issue a bond that is calls for a certain return on a certain date, and they will find participants that fit into that particular patent process of theirs to be able to meet their financial goal as the patent says. And what it is, it's intentionally sculpted to set people up for foreclosure, so that the monies that return are foreclosed monies and insurance monies. So these patents are intentionally geared towards harming us and to steal from us and steal our properties away from us. Not just our real property, but the property that the money's earned on our signature and our identity, which rightfully speaking is our property because it's our damn signature that's being used. We just don't know it because we gave it to them.
That's the part that just baffles people, and that they don't get how that could possibly be.
Well, that's why it's very important for everybody that has a MERS within their Fannie and Freddie documents must, for your own sake and good and understanding, get a copy, which is on my mortgage equals copyright derivative page, and tattoo it to your ass, and tattoo it to your husband's ass, or your wife's ass, or wherever you can read it, because that right there is your involuntary servitude agreement, but it's also prima facie evidence that you were never ever a debtor. That because it speaks to accounts, it speaks to separately managed accounts, it speaks to trusts that are associated with our name, with our identity, that we unknowingly gave them all rights to. So that's the whole hint. That's the whole.
I thought that when contracts, when certain things were not disclosed, that made them totally and completely illegitimate.
Null and void.
Thank you. That's what the words I was looking for.
It should be null and void. It should be void ab initio. But nobody's bringing it up, number one. Number two, even if it is brought up, as I tried to bring up in my case, it goes ignored. They ignore it. Why? Because all they see is an ordinary course. See, there's a big difference between ordinary course and not in the ordinary course. Not in the ordinary course of trade business practices are practices that are unfamiliar to the public. And without being disclosed to the public has no knowledge of these. And so what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with a system of sophisticated processes, right, that were never disclosed to people. And what are these sophisticated processes? Well, there are all these patented processes. There are all these patented schemes to make money and to exploit us. Now, the one thing about a patent is a patent owner has the right to exploit the patent. In other words, Alexander Graham Bell, his telephone patent. He had the right to exploit it. He had the right to exploit it and make as much money as he can off because it's his. And he also has a right to exclude others from using it. So what they've done here, in a little trick of the tail, with this MERS agreement, was they got us to give over our identity for exclusion as grantors to an innumerable number of patented processes. So, and then because we didn't know it, and because we weren't disclosed of it, we've been excluded from the benefits of its use.
That is just so criminal, and what a racket!
It's horrible. It's terrible.
They have made people homeless by doing this.
Yes, it's made people homeless. It has made people. It's got people thrown out of their houses by gunpoint. It's disgusting, and it's got to stop. And this is the way to stop it. Now, what I've learned, and I'm very happy about this, because what I've learned, well, a couple things. I've learned a lot of things, but what I've learned is that we do have remedy. Our remedy, though, has to go through Treasury. Now, let's talk about copyright for a minute. Copyright is our trade name. It's what's inherently ours. Now, when people say, "Oh, they own the name, we don't own the name," that's bullshit. Get that out of your head.
Oh, let me put this in there for a minute, because there are a lot of people that hold this belief, because this was out for a while, that the Crown Corporation owns your name. Your
they
legal
do.
name.
They do. They do,
Okay.
but so do dozens of other entities. Because why?
How did that happen? Hey?
Because of UCC 9. Because UCC 9 and the collateralization of our name and the rehypothecation of our name. So it's not just the Crown that owns it, it's other entities that own it. It's anybody that has a license over our name. And that's dozens of people. That's dozens of entities.
And how do they get those licenses? How do they get those claims over our name? Ken, explain that again.
Well, they got it by the virtue of our not knowing. And
Exactly.
our not knowing about the business processes or the actual use or what the name really represents. A lot of people go off about the Vatican. They go on and on and on and on and on about the Vatican. I'm so sick of hearing about the Vatican. Yes, it's true, okay, but at the same time, though, the Vatican is just a single spoke in this whole menagerie of dozens of other spokes that all go to one single hub. Okay, so what does all that mean? What that means is right now we have under codes and statutes we're incompetent. We're adherent to codes and statutes because we haven't come forward and claimed our constitutional rights. And when you say constitutional rights, everybody will say, "Oh, there's no constitutional rights." And they're right. You're right. But there is one place to restore your constitutional rights where common law is still very, very much recognized, and that's Treasury. Treasury's responsibility is to balance the books and deal with finances of the United States, the corporation United States. When people sit there and say, "I don't want to be a part of their corporation," no, you want to be a part of their corporation. You just want to be a stakeholder in their corporation. You want to be the transmitting utility that takes benefit of the corporation. You don't want to be, as we are, the accommodating party, which means that we're the fixture for abuse and adhere to codes and statutes because we're ignorant of all the underlying aspects here.
Boy, they sure set that up to their benefit, didn't they?
Well, of course they did. Of course they did. But Treasury is the place. It's the hub. It's the only place that we can get administrative remedies, and it's the only place where common law is still very much alive. Now, that being said, a lot of people are exercising gimmicks, what I call gimmicks out there. Some people are getting,
yeah, I agree.
Some people are getting remedies. Some people are getting ignored. Some people are getting thrown in jail. So, what's right and what's wrong here?
There should be consistency.
Well, there has to be a commonality of understanding and a system of education to get people to understand these sophisticated processes. And we do have to, and that's a kind of a. The word sophistication, sophisticated, is not intended to be condescending towards anybody. It's a word that they use. Mm-hmm. It's a word that is of their use in describing these not in the ordinary course trade practices. Mm-hmm. And that's what's taken place. Not in the ordinary course of trade practices, not disclosed and not represented with full disclosure and full understanding is a violation of our equal protection due process rights, which is constitutional. Mm-hmm. Now, to get to that, though, you can't get to that in this system of fixed codes and statutes. You can only get to it by rolling over into Treasury to get to the accounts. Now, here's what I've uncovered. Here's what I've discovered. I've discovered that there is record of all these transactions that are taking place and all these monies being earned and profits being taken and credits being taken with our name that is recorded under tax shelters with the IRS. Tax shelters, the tax shelters are the safe harbor. It's sheltering from taxes monies that are earned or credits that are earned. And those credits that are earned, whose credits are those? They're our credits. They're not anybody else's. They were our credits that we gave away through agreements, this Merged Nations Bank agreement that we never knew existed. But those are our credits.
Well, how do we get them back, Ken? How do we get them back? That's.
Well, Here's what I'm doing. What I'm working on right now, and what I've done now. I've gone through, and I've already put papers in the Treasury, into IRS, and I'm taking it one step further here. And what I'm doing now is I am doing a, and this is just something that if I could read it to you, this is something I've just kind of started doing here, and I haven't got it in totally complete yet or totally really formatted yet. But this is what I'm. Let me go back inside. I'm getting attacked by a bug out here. I'm outside.
Okay.
What I'm doing is I'm hitting these guys on just the facts. I'm taking this as an approach that this is business. It's business, and if you converted me to a corporation, then I'm gonna come back in a business sense and take it back because I have every right to, and I do have every right to. And this is what's nice about the IRS tax shelters. There's 26 pages of them that I come across. 26 pages of tax shelters. We are classified as the unknowing passive investor, meaning that we handed over the management of our assets to a third-party principal without our knowing, and without knowing that we are the actual equity owner and principal secured party. And we did this by virtue and through and by under the Articles of Incorporation in the state of Delaware that says that we as a natural person hand over all management issues of our assets to a principal underneath the laws of Delaware to manage our assets, to issue stocks and bonds as they see fit, and all these other things that we as a natural person would have agreed. Well, no, I'm sorry. No natural person, no living person would ever agree to hand over their assets to somebody for somebody else to manage without getting a nickel in return.
Yeah, well, that's just a bad business deal, isn't it?
But this goes back to 1907, though. This goes back to the 1907 Articles of Incorporation of Corporate Trust Company of America, which in 1934 they amended that to drop the words of America, so it became Corporate Trust Company, which now is CT Corporation, which is Wilmington Delaware Trust, which is the agent for every single one of these banks. So anytime you serve a summons through an agency to Merrill Lynch or to Bank of America, you're serving it through CT Corporation. So you're given tacit authority to manage your assets by serving these people. It's a total scam.
Oh my God! It just never quits.
No, it doesn't. But like I said, there's an out here. Now here's what I'm doing. What I'm doing now is I got to follow up my paperwork that I've already got in Treasury, and I'm filing 2848, which is a domestic representation. I'm firing all powers of attorney, and I'm inserting myself as the power of attorney to make all decisions, because that's the biggest problem we have here. The biggest problem we have when we gave our identity over to people unknowingly through the Merged Nations Bank Agreement, we were given a power of attorney, blanket power of attorney to an attorney, to a broker, to any other scumbucket that has got access to our license to create assets and make money and exploit us. And that's what's happening here. So what we have to do is we have to remove all powers of attorney, and you can't do it by a blanket power of attorney. Every agency you go through, you got to fill out their forms, and you got to fill out an affidavit appointing yourself as attorney in fact. So what I'm doing now is I'm preparing, I'm in the latter stages of getting a 14039 IRS identity theft affidavit together, the 2848 domestic representation, firing all parties attorney and insert myself. Now, as what I'm doing with this identity theft affidavit, and this is just what I've written so far on it, as a blanket statement that attaches to it that Merged Nations Bank Agreement. I would highly encourage everybody to get a copy of that. Like I said, tattoo it to your wife's, your boyfriend's, your girlfriend's ass so you always see it, because that is your agreement to freedom. It's also your slavery agreement, but it's also prima facie evidence that you were never a debtor and that you demand to see the books balanced. So what I'm doing is I'm going into the IRS, and I am removing all powers of attorney so I have access to all the information of any Tom, Dick, or Harry or scumbucket attorney who has ever bled from my account and hiding in tax shelter to exploit me and to steal from me and to steal my private property. My private property, my signature is my signature. It's not yours. It's nobody else's. It's my signature. And when we were not given disclosure of that MERS agreement, they took our private signature, which is our identity, which is our personality. They dragged that into their private. Well, you can't drag my identity and my personality into your private, because now you're controlling it. And because it's in your private, all the monies and assets that are being earned, because my personal private property is, like I said, because of UCC 9, it is earning money, and it is gaining value every time my signature is put on something. So that's
makes
my
you not
money.
want to
It's
sign
not your money. Huh?
Makes you not want to sign anything until you correct this.
Well, you sign things now differently. I mean, you sign things all rights reserved, and so we got to learn how to do things differently.
Does it matter how you actually sign your name? Like if you sign your family name and then put a comma?
No. That's all hogwash.
That
People do
work?
this. Kenneth William of the Family Doss. That's hogwash bullshit.
Okay.
It doesn't. It's right to a certain degree, but you're operating in business. You know, this is what everything that we're dealing with is in commerce. You know, and you got to deal with it that way. When people put in all this stuff, and I can understand it, because I've spent hours and hours, countless hours studying documents in Treasury and the systems by which they operate. I can easily see why somebody would sit there at Treasury and think that we're nonsensical idiots by putting in some of this stuff. Because if we want remedy, we've got to deal with it on a realistic basis. On a business basis, and that's really what we're dealing with here. We're dealing on what the goal here is to say, listen, I know I've got accounts out there, I know I've got trust out there, I know that my identity was stolen, and I never gave authority to it, so I revoke all that. I'm taking back my name, and I want a balancing of the books to reveal to me the separately managed accounts and trust, which clearly are spelled out within the mortgage, the MERS Nations Bank agreement, because I'm the rightful owner of these assets, and I want them back. So that's kind of where I'm going with this.
I like that, Ken, because I like the idea of I'm taking my name back. You stole my name,
and you have all rights to. And you have all rights to do that, even within IRS papers, even within many of these tax shelters. Within one particular one, we are the guarantor collateral. We're the guarantor collateral, and that is seen as a debtor. That's a surety. Okay. Now the IRS looks at it a different way. The IRS says that they define the guarantor collateral as a creditor and not a debtor.
And they've got us as the debtor all the time.
As a debtor all the time. Well, common law is very much alive and well in Treasury. And Treasury clearly states that what a man puts in, a man should get out. And this includes being the collateral, being the guarantor of collateral, being the surety. That makes us the creditor, not a debtor. We're the creditor. So we've got to make the claim to get that back.
So,
well, how do we do that? We don't do that by sitting there saying, I am Kenneth William of the Doss family. We don't do it that way. That's nonsensical. We just make a claim, and we do it by affidavit, and we open up the books. But we do it by what gives us the authority is the removal of that intermediary party between our all caps name, our fiction, and our signatory. And we got to remove that. We got to take control of that. And once we have control of that as the attorney in fact, now we can go ahead and ask for records pertinent to our name, because now we've removed all powers of attorney. So there's nobody that's standing in between us. That make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It makes very much sense. But now we go to the Treasury to do this, and the IRS?
And the IRS is the way I'm going about it.
Uh-huh.
Now, what I've written here so far, if I can find where I started here. Okay, here's what I've written so far, and this is going to be attached to my 14039. That's going to be attached with, of course, the MERS Nations Bank agreement as prima facie evidence. And this is what I've written so far, and it's not written in stone yet, but this is where I'm going with this, so people have an idea, and this might help people understand a little bit more too. The affiants have known for quite a number of years that the economic and financial harms suffered are expressly due to the terms and conditions of the MERS/Nations Bank credit/security agreement, see attached, an agreement that was intentionally concealed of any and all disclosure or representations. Knowing is one thing. Gaining the sophisticated knowledge of trade practices not in the ordinary course, intentionally concealed by superior entities and powers in the origination with intentional misrepresentations instead of an ordinary course transaction, thus the express cause of affiance harms, is quite another. Even with said sophisticated knowledge and understanding of concealed trade practices not in the ordinary course, causing to affiance harms, has served little by way of acquiring remedy, given a system operating in complete lawlessness with continuing and ongoing false and fabricated representations that are affiance referred to as the ordinary course public deception. Thus, the affiance harms are perpetuated as continuing and ongoing. It is, okay, I'm going to turn the page. It is, where'd it go now? It is a fact that Own It Mortgage Solutions, Inc., and the sponsor and equity owners thereunder, CEO and Director William Dallas, Bank of America, CIBC Partners, Murray Hill Credit Partners, and Merrill Lynch perpetuated a fraud upon affiance with intentional misrepresentations of a mortgage loan to real property that, in fact and truth, is a mortgage and copyright, not real property. It is a fact that Fannie and Freddie perpetrated a fraud upon a affiance with the intentional misrepresentation of MERS within the document itself. It is the fact that Fannie and Freddie Standard Uniform Instrument, Deed of Trust, is a creation by and under presidential mandate of Richard Nixon that sets in stone a standard loan instrument that is to be understood by all, including and most importantly consumers. By said mandate, all terms and conditions are drawn within the four corners, and nothing is to exist by way of hidden terms or conditions outside of said four walls and corners of the Fannie-Freddie Standard Uniform Instrument. It is a fact that the addition of MERS in the Fannie and Freddie Standard Uniform Instrument renders the transaction null and void with the blatant intentional violation of the mandate under which the instrument was created for reasons expressly due to intentional misrepresentation and the non-truthful disclosure of MERS. It is a fact that Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems, Inc., MERS, is a United States registered service trademark, which under the laws of the Langham Act is represented as MERS with a circle R, which is for the express benefit of consumers so that they can so that they have the ability to source the goods and products purchased. And I go in further and I say William Dallas, the CEO of Own It, orchestrated, formulated, and executed a fraud on the marketplace. As the CEO, director, and creator of Own It Mortgage Solutions, backed by Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, and other banking entities, with public deceit of a business model as a mortgage lender. The Own It is best described in an examining trademark review brief that is a final refusal to granting registration to one of Own It's marks called the Right Loan, written by Stephen Foster, a trademark attorney, of a writing taking place on 1/6/2006, in which he says, and I quote, "Applicant also argues that the purchasers of its services are sophisticated, making confusion less likely. However, the recited services of the respective parties are not limited to professionals with extensive experience in the trade, but are stated broadly and would include services offered to ordinary purchasers who may obtain mortgages only a small number of times in their lifetimes. It may be presumptuous to believe that these purchasers are sophisticated or experienced in these matters, when indeed they are not. Even assume an arguendo that they are sophisticated or knowledgeable in applicant's field does not necessarily mean that they're sophisticated or knowledgeable in the field of trademarks or immune from source confusion." So anyhow, that's where I'm at on it now.
Wow.
So do you understand where I'm going with it? And when I'm stating facts, I'm not going out into the realm of
You're staying in peace. You're staying in peace. You're not causing a fight, so to speak. You're staying in peace by presenting the facts as they are, and
right.
It demonstrates the fraud.
Right.
And
well,
theft.
exactly. We don't have to go out. In my opinion, we don't have to go down all these other paths. And I've done the affidavits, and I got a lot of great affidavits. Claiming sovereign and all kinds of other affidavits where we talk about natural person or living man, so on and so forth.
I know. I've been involved in some of that too, and it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work, and it doesn't work because we're not dealing with the actual We're not dealing with the actual realities of transaction.
I knew there was another. I just knew there had to be more to this than what we've. I mean, you can't blame people for trying to find remedy and coming up with different ideas that we know that we're living and we're not dead, or a dead, not a dead in the sense of the word, but you know what I mean. We are living, but they treat us as a fiction. But anyway, and they steal from us right and left.
Well, they've raped, robbed, and pillaged from us. I mean, what's going on here is disgusting. And it's worse than that, actually. And this is why the IRS is so important, because, and I found this out, and this really was substantiated greatly, because right now I can't really do anything further with Treasury because the IRS informed me. Basically, get your returns up to date, so we can basically, in a manner of speaking, and summarizing their words. So kind of like it's more like saying, "Hey, dumbass, get your filings in, so we could do a proper assessment of what is owed and what is earned by way of a FOIA request to open up those accounts." That's a huge hint.
Well, you know what? If the IRS is, and most people have very bad opinions of the IRS. However, if we were turned into the creditor instead of the debtor, and were, reverse the tables on all this fraud that's been perpetrated upon us, what's the big deal? You'll be more than happy to pay the IRS because you got the resources to do it with.
Here's the thing. I don't believe the IRS is all bad. Mm-hmm. I believe that
most people
what they
do.
are is that they're inhibited to give us certain information unless we have proper standing to acquire that information. What does proper standing mean? That means that you remove all powers of attorney, so that the information, so that you're representing yourself, and you don't have a damn attorney representing you to keep information from you or to hide information from you. And that's exactly what's going on. These bar attorneys out there and these brokers acting as our intermediary, they've perpetuated, they've engineered a system. Well, here I'll summarize it for you very simply. There is a trademark assignment. I believe it's First American Title. It might be CoreLogic. It might be Bank of America. I don't know which one it is offhand, but and really the language is the same in them all, except this one particular one really stood out and really kind of angered me, and I got to really find it, post it, and let everybody see the actual words in it, because it says that we exist, meaning you and I as the grantors, as the collateral guarantor, that we exist for the pleasures and profits of legal representatives and their affiliates and subsidiaries.
Oh, that's
how inflamed is that?
Ooh. I'm on fire. No.
that's how they see us.
Oh, that is disgusting. How dare they?
And that's how they see us. And that is how these codes and statutes have been set up to function. When a mortgage loan, alleged mortgage loan, is targeted for default, what happens? And this is out of the terms and conditions of a Delaware indenture and trust agreement. An attorney will issue what's called a will be debt opinion to a national tax authority, thereby making us and throwing us under the receivership of the federal government. Okay? And they will use our signature to having us agree to act as a transferor, as an incompetent minor, using we're transferor under the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act, where we are donating and giving our property away because we're basically incompetent. And
is that the age of majority
statute? Huh?
Is that related to the age of majority thing?
No, not so much that. No, it really isn't so much that.
Okay.
You know, it does have a lot to do with that, but it more has to do with the General Allotment Act. There was an act in 1897, 1891, I believe, that's called the General Allotment Act, or the Dawes Act, I believe is what it's called. And the first couple acts of it have been repealed, but the remaining acts remain. And the acts that have been repealed have kind of been rewritten into other codes or other acts. And it has to do with Indian tribal lands on territories. And it has to do with trusts that are being set up underneath these tribal lands to the owners of property that have been Indians that have taken up parcels upon territories and have been deemed as incompetent and having and being removed from their property, so that the trusts that are created underneath will liquidate to parties other than the Indians. And this is done through, of all places, the railroad pension fund.
Oh my God! Is that how they're stealing tribal land?
That's how they're stealing it, because the premise being here is that, and these are the acts, the parts of the act that are still true under that General Allotment Act. Railroads go through lands, so railroads reach properties through the lands, and so what they've done here, they've used that as a means to liquidate these trusts or hide these trusts and pension funds that are thus liquidating to the private side and being held on the private side that are for employees of the federal government. Well, when we're made employees of the federal government basically with our Social Security number, but when we are thrown into federal receivership, when that will be debt letter is issued or opinion is issued, which is a fraudulent misrepresentation because there never was a mortgage loan to begin with, so it's a false and fabricated foreclosure. What happens is we become an employee of the federal government that is being managed by GSA contractor employees, and their job is to get back the monies that are owed to the federal government, because now our property has gone into the federal receivership of the federal government. So it goes on and on and on. I mean, these are all rabbit holes, but I don't like using that word because rabbit holes don't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. These holes and these paths of travel, I've got it all connected. It all falls into a circle. And I've got this whole thing, I am confident to say I've got this whole thing totally reverse engineered, exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it, and the question then is, okay, well, how do we capitalize on it, and how do we get back our properties? And that is through the IRS tax shelters, because the railroad pension and even the way we function in Admiralty Maritime and all those conversions. Remember, when we talk about fictitious names, we're not talking about just derivatives of the spelling. We're talking about conversions. So all these conversions to shallow-hulled vessels and all these things, and railroad rolling stock, those are all conversions of us, okay? And that's what's operating in trade. All of these things are reflective within IRS tax shelters. So the tax shelters are safe harbor for protecting the assets and capitalizing on the assets that are rightfully due and owing to who? Us.
Wow. Well, that sounds a little bit complicated, I have to tell you.
It's not. It's not complicated. It's actually very simple.
But for the average person that hasn't looked into this...
No, wait a second.
Okay.
Let's get
Make it simple. Make it simple.
What's the simplified explanation is, listen, recognize the fact that your name has value to it, that your name is trading and making money in trusts and all kinds of financial instruments that you were not made aware of, to which you actually are entitled to a return on, because you're serving as the basis for the collateral, and you're taking all the risk. Okay, understand that part?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. I'm sure that's understood very well now. That's what I'm getting at.
So once you have that understanding down, what do you do from here? Okay, well, you recognize the fact that all of these trusts, these accounts, all these conversions, all these credits that are due and owing to your name are hidden within IRS tax shelters. That's easy enough to understand, right?
Yeah, all hidden.
Okay, so the next step is, okay, now I want to find out what these tax shelters are. I want to make a claim to these tax shelters, but first I have to kind of correct my status, which really is not so much correcting my status as it is removing the intermediary that is hidden between myself, the living man, and my all-caps name, who is making decisions for me that I don't know are being made, and is making it difficult for me to get anybody to speak to me or get any kind of lawful justice. So I got to remove that. So what do? You do an affidavit for revocation of all powers of attorney, appointing yourself as attorney in fact. That's simple enough to understand, right?
Yes. That's
Then
okay.
what you do is then you start filing with the IRS. You do 14039, and you start going after those tax shelters. And you make the claim that the kind of we're talking about, kind of like I just read to you. Those are the areas that we're going. And that's all simple stuff. It's not complicated to understand.
It certainly is a very different approach, though. I can tell you that right
And
now.
it's the only way you're ever going to get remedy. Only. It's the only way we're ever going to get remedy. Now, what's going to happen here, what will happen here eventually, I foresee, is that this is going to bust wide open. I can tell because I stay very in touch with documents from Treasury that the Treasury's issuing. That basically is their internal documents and discussions of where their heads they're at, essentially, on all the issues that are taking place. And I can tell you for certain that what's going on here is that they're starting to wake up to the frauds that are taking place, and they're kind of shocked by what's going on. They're keeping a close eye on a lot of these things that are going on because they're starting to recognize that there's major identity theft and fraud taking place here. So we've got to make those claims. And the claim when we put in nonsensical claims, as some people are doing with their gimmicks, it's not going to get us anywhere. It's going to get us either laughed at, ignored, or possibly thrown in jail.
Yes.
So you have to approach this from a logical standpoint, with your feet firmly on the ground, and stated as such, and stating your position. And the beauty of this is that MERS Nations Bank Agreement. That's prima facie evidence that they stole your identity. They took your identity by the presumption that you assumably agreed, which you never agreed because it was never even represented to you, nor even disclosed to you.
That is so disgusting. And it's so funny when you see all of these advertisements about identity theft, and it's not even the true identity theft, if you want to know what I mean.
It's not. It's not. It's recognizing the fact that you've got ascertainable value within your identity, that your personal identity, your name has value to it, and that value is being bought and sold on a daily basis. And if that's the case, why the hell am I'm not getting the money for that?
Yeah, why am I living like a pauper when I shouldn't be?
Exactly. And see what they're doing is that they're exploiting us because their whole intention is to gain profits off of our demise. Because what they're doing is they're padding up all these living living annuities, insurances, so that they can give them away to others, people like their family, their friends, their kids, the insurance industry, and take them away from us. And that's what they're doing. So what they're doing is they've created a system to drive up our value through our imminent death, not legal, not real death, but legal death by being deemed incompetent, so that they could take away our trust and our estate. And that's what they're doing. And that's what's taking place. That's how it operates through the General Allotment Act and through the railroad pensions.
That is
and all
amazing.
This stuff, and like I said, all this stuff is these are all IRS tax shelters. It's all sheltering. So your safe harbor, you've heard the term safe harbor before.
Yes.
Safe harbor, and MERS was granted safe harbor. Well, what is safe harbor? MERS, if you read that agreement and you really absorb that agreement and put it in context to tax shelters, and sheltering of income and sheltering of assets and sheltering from taxes, well, what you've got is safe harbor. Well, where do you go to get safe harbor? Well, that's Treasury IRS.
Wow.
So, I mean, yes, it's a whole different spin on things, but this is a realistic spin on things. You've got to understand, and people have to understand what's going on here. What's going on here, the reason why there's no remedy out there, or that nobody's listening to us, is because we're dealing with an economic system that is based on practices not in the ordinary course of business that are purported and represented as being ordinary course. And that's a fraud. That's a huge fraud in the marketplace because there was an economic coup. That economic coup began in 1998, and it actually was carried out when Merrill Lynch and Own It Mortgage intentionally set into motion the collapsing of the economy. And that took place when Own It and Merrill Lynch ordered all their lines of credit, warehouse lines of credit to all these lenders, ordered them to abandon all lending standards. So what happened? They gave out houses to people that really, truly shouldn't have gotten houses, that were mixed in with people that were deserving of getting houses or were qualified for it. And what happened? The economy collapsed. But when the economy collapsed, the banks have fixed it. They fixed the system. They fixed it so that all the insurance and all the pensions and all the union pensions would collapse and fail. Why? Because they fixed it so that they would collect all the insurances and they would collect all the properties and all the ownership of everybody in the land. And what they did now, too, further, which is more despicable, is that they've created all these, this economic boom that created all these houses out of lands that were previously raw lands. Now what they've done is they've created more parcels of land that they can come in and they can take claim to and steal and get a land patent on. So they're stealing one property at a time. It's despicable. It's despicable. And what it is, it goes against the law. It's a violation of the law against perpetuities. And the law against perpetuities speaks to where the government finds it unlawful that for corporations to own property, people's personal private property. Well, what is your name? Your name is the personal private property. So what happened here is you have a corporation, MERS, and MERS Corp Holdings, Inc., who have stolen your name, right, and have taken precedence over your name, and they're coming in and foreclosing on a person's name as being incompetent. But really what's happening here is the only reason why they're foreclosing on people or taking people's assets is because they took their name.
Oh, my God. That is
and the name belongs under so the name's being controlled by the corporation. So when they take away a person's property, they sell a person's property, it's sitting vacant there, and then somebody comes in and buys it. Who's really buying it? There's somebody that's really buying it. It's controlled by a corporation, and that violates the law against perpetuities.
That is disgusting.
It is disgusting. Because you got to remember, we're not just talking about real property is not the issue here. I mean, it is because you're dealing with people's houses and land. So I mean, that certainly is the issue. But the deeper issue here that this derives out of is the theft of a person's private personal property, which is their name. Again, goes back to UCC 9 with the collateralization. That's what people got to understand. People got to understand that I have value in my name. You're coming after my real property, but the value that's been created in my name overrides any amount of value of my real property because it's my name that is making money. It's my name that's been rehypothecated many times and sold. They didn't sell mortgage loans in these loan pools. They sold your personality, your name into these mortgage loan pools. Why? Because there never was a mortgage loan. It was a lease agreement. And they were selling these things on the premise of when you were going to basically be foreclosed upon.
I got to ask you something. Some people have done aspects of because I had a woman say this to me. Well, my home is homesteaded, so they can't take it away from me.
Yeah, so that's true. I mean, that's it. But see, here's the despicable part. Here's the despicable part of that Fannie and Freddie document. Within that Fannie and Freddie document, you waive all rights of homestead. So not only is that, and you'd also waive all rights of transferring any kind of title, which means that they prohibited you from protecting yourself by setting yourself up in trust, number one, and they've also taken away you from protecting yourself by the Homestead Act. So the whole Fannie and Freddie document is a fraud. It's a complete fraud, and that's what we need to start recognizing. We need to we need to get rid of all this other nonsensical bullshit. Pardon my French, and all this and fighting in the courts. And we need to stand firmly on principle and fact. And those principle and facts begins with that Fannie and Freddie document, which is basically rooted in fraud.
So
it takes away all your rights to protect yourself, including your homestead rights, and including protecting yourself in any kind of trust. So it takes away all of that stuff.
So on the one hand, you have protection through some homesteaded document that is usurped and turned back over or around or upside down by the loan.
Well, yes, by the Fannie and Freddie document itself. Here's what I found out in the state of Oregon. In the state of Oregon, if you're homesteaded and you get evicted from your house, then you're guaranteed after the liquidation, you're guaranteed a payment of $50,000. Well, guess what? When you sign that Fannie and Freddie document, you gave up those rights to Homestead. So when the sheriff comes in and throws you out, who gets that $50,000? It's spread amongst the sheriffs and judges.
Oh, my God, you're kidding me.
No, that's what's going on here. They're getting the money. They're getting the money from that splits out from the homesteads. That's what they're getting. There's corporations that are set up. In Oregon, I think it's Columbia County or maybe all of Oregon, the sheriff has a benevolent association that is, what is it now? It's the athletic club or something out in Clatskanie. Okay, so it's a dummy front.
Oh, that's so...
And they're getting that, and they're getting those monies through the Homestead Act. That's why these sheriffs and everybody, I mean, they're getting paid for this shit. They're getting paid. It may not be, they may not be directly after they throw somebody out of their house by gunpoint. They go back to their office and somebody's standing there with a wad of cash. Okay, here's your $10,000 worth. Here's your $10,000 worth. It's diffused down through corporations and businesses and associations and everything.
It's hidden.
It's hidden. Yeah, it's hidden. It's hidden. But see, now here's another thing that's going on, and I don't know quite how to explain this because this is a little bit difficult to explain. I guess you have to kind of go on the site and see it. But underneath the Department of Transportation, what they're doing is they've created the system that operates in virtual world of brokers who are buying and selling us and trading us through the transportation cycle by motor carrier, transporting us to port, so that we can be put on shallow-hulled boats and set down river to another port for trading. I mean, it's all these things that we talk about with Admiralty Maritime, and they're doing this in the virtual world, and that's what they're doing every day to us. And they're acting as a transmitting utility to trade or to balance the excise taxes of accommodating parties.
Oh, my God.
It's a disgust. What's going on here is absolutely abhorrent. It's absolutely disgusting. But they can't get away with it if we start standing up to the actual facts and of the. We can't win in court. We can't do it because the court's a joke. The court's a kangaroo court. It's fixed. We're living in a system of absolute lawlessness, and that's what it is. It's lawlessness. And the only way to go up against that is not what the Colorado 8 is doing by sitting there attacking the federal government. We've got to realize that we've got power with the federal government. We have power with our copyright, 1790 Copyright Act. Our power is when the living man comes forward. All records and all everything vests back to the living man. And in the event that monies were earned behind the living man's back, he's entitled to damages. Well, that's exactly what they've done here. They've lured us into this merged nations bank agreement to give up our identity so that they can make a freaking killing on it and abuse us and exploit us and exclude us from any kind of benefit. Well, the living man comes forward and he puts himself on the land in treasury with a claim that says, "Hey, I'm here as a living person, as the actual person here, and I've been harmed. I own all these fictitious entities that are created off of my name, from my name, and all conversions thereof, and I demand to be made whole." And now what you do? Now you put yourself back on the soil, and you have constitutional protections. Now you get the federal government to go after these guys. You don't do it the opposite way. You don't beat the shit out of the federal government. We use the federal government through the use of our copyright. Because as it is now, they have, as incompetence to codes and statutes, they have proprietary use and oversight over our copyright.
So the states are abusing us as well.
It's the states. No, it's the states that are doing everything. The states are crooked as hell. But the states...
And people think just the opposite. That's so funny. Because
no, it's not the opposite. The states have rights. States' rights. States can enact their laws and whatnot. Even though these laws may derive from federal statute, it's still the states that have the rights to modify those or operate in their own right. And yes, federal trumps state, but federal can't trump state unless you put yourself onto the land to show that you've been constitutionally violated. And you can't do that by an ordinary claim under codes and statutes because there is no code, there is no law. They've taken it away. The bar attorneys have taken away all our rights. They've taken away all our rights. Remember, We exist for the pleasures and profits of legal representatives in
That
their
is
own words.
disgusting. So we have to go through the federal
We have to go to the
IRS and
federal
Treasury
government.
in order
Yes,
to...
we have to, because that's where we get our constitutional protections, and this is why the copyright's so important. We have a shared copyright agreement with that's inherent by the 1790 Copyright Act. That's a shared copyright with the federal government. So it's a shared copyright, and we come in and we make the claim as the executor, right? We want to be made whole because we recognize that there's all these accounts out there that were taken on misrepresentation and fraudulent means. We understand that there's all these tax shelters out there. Well, trillions of dollars has been taken out of the country by tax shelters, and the IRS is chomping at the bits to go after these guys, and they can't go after them. Why? Because we're not making the claim. We're not putting ourselves in the position to make a claim to allow them to go after them.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, that is awesome.
So these are the things. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so have you, I know you were putting together a website. Has that manifested yet, or is that still?
No, it hasn't. I had to put that aside because it's too much time to go in. I got a bunch of data uploaded, and I kind of had not really falling out. Well, I kind of did have a falling out with the people I was working with, because to get the website actually up and running requires linking of documents and everything. And until I'm actually through the process myself, I don't have time to do that.
I understand. Yeah, I get
and
that.
this is more important. This is what I'm doing right now. Is more important than getting that website going. We got to have a definitive path of remedy in place before I can do that, and that's the right thing to do.
That is the right thing to do, because that way you've been through the trenches and come out on top, and then you can put together.
Well, the natural question is going to be, well, so you don't know if it works. That's what somebody's going to say. Well, you don't know if it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but I know it's going to work. You know why I know it's going to work? It's because I see all the authorities that are there. I've studied the documents. I see what's in the tax shelters. I see what they're referring to. I see that they recognize, fully 1,000% recognize that we're the passive investor, and that we as collateral guarantor of collateral are not the debtor but the creditor. So I see it in the documents and forms. I see how Treasury operates, and I see how it operates in common law and how they're looking at these things that people are claiming. So to sit there and say, okay, well, so you don't know if it works yet. No, I don't know if it works yet, but that's the path for our remedy. That's the only path for remedy that we've got. It's it, right there. And to be able to make those claims, and for them to deny those claims, they're going to deny.
What that reminds me of is I really see the benefit of it being through the federal rather than the state, because one of the things that happens with the state is there's so much inconsistency from one state to another state.
Okay. Yes. Let me give you an example. I'll give you a perfect example of that. The perfect example is the MERS Nations Bank Agreement. Not one of us is even aware of that agreement or aware that it even existed. And it clearly states within that agreement that these are laws. This agreement is to be construed under the laws of the Commonwealth of the State of Virginia. Well, I never frickin' agreed to that. Neither did you. And by us becoming adherent to the Commonwealth of the State of Virginia, that means that throws us right into Admiralty Maritime, because Commonwealths are adherent to the Crown, and also allows judges to take cognizance of federal law or state law. And so that's what they're doing. No, federal law, I'm sorry. So that's what they're doing. So now every one of us in all 50 states is adherent to the laws of the Commonwealth of the State of Virginia that we never agreed to or never was disclosed to. We're also adherent to the processes out of the state of Delaware with the principle directed trust, which is why they're foreclosing on people and why they have all this authority to foreclose on people. We're under the insurance laws of Florida, I believe it is, and under oil and gas of California. So yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Every one of these states is different.
And they're killing us with it.
And they're killing us with it, yes. So that's why you're not a state national. You don't want to be a state national. You're an American national. An American national, that's a collection of a union of states that is supposed to be that forms a national government that's supposed to be work for the common good. Well, you've got all these individual states that are screwing us.
Oh, that's very upsetting. We're getting screwed in so many directions. It's not even funny.
Yes, but this is good stuff, though. This is where we're at now. This is the culmination point. These are things that are this is a realistic view of reality that we haven't seen. It is. I mean, it's upsetting. It's very upsetting. So when I talk to people, I try to tell people, take everything that you ever thought to be true and throw it out the window.
Exactly. Or think in opposites.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are things that, solutions are going to have to be based on logic. There has to be logic in everything, and there is no logic in anything that's going on. It's all totally illogical. But when you get down to the meat of the matter, which is what we're talking about here today, it comes down to recognizing, again, simple things, recognizing that your identity has value, recognizing that value has been capitalized on and profited from, to which you've got no return, and to which you have all right to return. And the only place to really capture that is make a claim within Treasury and IRS to open up those counts and balance the books so that you're treated accordingly and lawfully entitled to what you're entitled to.
Well, that's awesome. And I applaud you for the research and information that you're bringing forward, because it is new, it is different, and it's unlike a lot of the other things out there. And I'm not knocking anyone else and what they've done, because we're all in a learning process. It's a learning curve. And it takes a long time to get a good handle or grasp on something, because through all the different things that you've read over the year, it sets off little light bulbs here and there at different things that helps you to pull it together. And so that makes you a very special researcher in this area, bringing forward information that is invaluable to people. And I applaud you for that. Bravo, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the day when you can bring a website up, and when you do have the success that you rightfully deserve in all of this. And I will be following in your footsteps as soon as we get it all figured out, because I think it's I don't need to have anyone stealing from me, and neither does anyone else for that matter.
Right.
Based on
I don't think anybody has to wait for a website to come up. I think that things that
you're putting the information out there on YouTube and in various ways. And for example, I know I will listen to my own show again.
Right. I mean, because these are tangible things that people should be
looking into,
taking notice of now and be looking at. Yes. Yeah. I mean, because now people are fighting this are people that are intelligent, and these are intelligent things and logical things based in reality and based in things that we already know about, which is taxes and IRS, but it opens up a whole new realm of it opens up a whole new door that's out there that I think people can latch on to and understand pretty easily.
Well, it makes you
all these other things which people are trying to scratch their heads over as far as citizenship issues are concerned and whatnot. And that's another thing. As another note, real quickly, is the citizenship and nationality issues. They've gone to the extent where, and this is why it's important to be able to amend your returns and change your status, because they have changed our status behind our backs. And they have shipped us overseas, and we've been residing part year in Luxembourg or Australia, and these are all things that are reflected in tax shelters. Well, again, if this is my identity that has been used to do these things, then I'm entitled to those benefits, not some pirate that has stolen them from me.
I agree, Ken, and all I can say is keep moving forward, keep bringing this wonderful information forward. I would be happy to have you on my show again sometime. But
Thank you.
We're coming to the point where I need to bring this to a close. And
Okay.
I would just like to ask you if there's any other, summary points or information that you want people to take home with them, just to run them by one more time, because that's how people learn. So you got the floor again.
Okay, number one, if MERS is in your alleged mortgage loan, please get a hold of the MERS Nations Bank Agreement. There's a copy of it on my mortgage equals copyright derivative page. Tattoo it wherever you can see it on a regular basis and read it regularly. Number one. Number two, recognize the fact that that your personality, your signature, your name, albeit is a fiction, it is worth value, of considerable value, and so that and understanding that, think in terms of books and the balancing of books, and kind of gear yourself towards the IRS and Treasury, and a study of tax sheltering and how that operates in conjunction with your personality and value to your personality. But the number one most important thing is get that MERS Nations Bank Agreement. Read that thing time and time again and understand that the person that's being talked about in there is you. MERS is actually you. So you are MERS. And you're entitled to all the benefits of MERS because that was taken from you by extension, by nomination, within the Fannie and Freddie document. And that Fannie and Freddie document is a fraudulent document. It violates the mandate. So these are the things that I think I would like people to, if anybody wants to take away from anything from this, are those elements, and start kind of going in those directions, because those are the directions that are going to get us to remedy. There's no other way.
I would have to agree. From what I've seen happen to people with other remedies that are ignored by the court, that don't seem to hold water. It might hold a little water somewhere because there might be some judge or so on that actually thinks maybe has some degree of conscience or something like that. But the vast majority don't.
The thing about it too, though, is you've got this is all based in fact, and the biggest thing that hurts us is this dividing line that sees us as anybody who's in foreclosure as like a liar, deadbeat, and cheat. Well, the things that we've talked about here today are not just pertinent to people that are in foreclosure, but anybody who So there's the ordinary sheeple out there. Grab their attention. And say, hey, did you know that you've got all kinds of accounts that are being hidden from you? We got to break down this barrier that sees us as liars, deadbeats, and cheats. And this is something that ordinary sheeple can grasp onto. It doesn't make you look like a nut like you do if you talk about the birth certificates and all those issues. This is something that is tangible. That hey, buddy, you know that you've got all kinds of accounts that are being hidden from you, and and that's going to get people's attention. And I think these are the things that we need to kind of focus on to break down the barriers.
Well, right on, Ken, and I appreciate your information. And like I said before, I appreciate the research that you've done and what you're bringing forward. And let's do this again sometime. And
great.
Just stay in touch and let me know if you've come on to anything else or, anything has worked and been brought forward. Just let me know and we'll do this again. And
great. Thank you.
More information to the people out there, because truth is where it's at and disclosure is in process, and you're playing a very important role in that. So
thank you.
Again,
thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and get the archive out there.
I will, and I will. I'll get this out there in a couple of days, and I will send a copy to you. And I would like to thank you again, and thank the listening audience. And they should. Is there any way that people could send you questions, or would that cause too much?
That would cause at this point. I get umpteen million questions a day, and I apologize to people if I don't answer. I can't possibly answer all the questions I'm getting.
I bet. So anyway, I tell you what I'll do. I will put my email out there, gailofgaia@gmail.com. If you have questions for Ken, I will compile them and I will in a future show, ask some of them. I won't be able to ask all of them, but Ken and I will discuss it, and we'll bring more information forward. So thank you.
And also, too, one other thing, if you want, so people will know where to find me, they can find me at Facebook, Ken Dost, or at Mortgage Equals Copyright Derivative Facebook page.
Oh, mortgage equals
Copyright Derivative. That page has been because the website has kind of been put on hold or in flux. I've brought that. I've reenacted that mortgage page.
Cool.
So, and the mortgage page, the Ken Doss page doesn't have documents or anything, but the Mortgage Equals Copyright Derivative page does have, in the files section, there's a lot of files in there, but the most important one is that MERS Nations Bank Agreement. You can get that from there, or you can get it from United States Patent and Trademarks Office under the registered mark of MERS.
Okay, great. Well, you've given people a source that they can go and read about some of the things that we talked about and do your own homework, and that's a good thing. Because
yes, absolutely.
Get educated, folks. You need to understand what we're talking about, and you need to do some of your own research to clarify things, and then re-listen to videos. That's what I do. Anyway, thank you so much, Ken, and thank you, listening audience, and we'll have you back again, Ken, and you keep up the great work. Thank you.
Great. Thank you much.
Okay. Goodbye.
All right. Bye-bye.
You're listening to 98.1 FM, KPFB LP, Perumps Freedom Radio.